Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. SoupX, the Startup Expo, North America's premier startup conference, is March 6th and 7th, 2017, in sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Affordably priced, SoupX is a 2-day international conference featuring workshops, panels, speeches, a $50,000 startup competition, and over 100 exhibitors. For more information, go to sup-x.org. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Brian Nickerson. He's the CEO and co-founder at MagicLinks. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you're doing with MagicLinks is really interesting and cool and innovative. But maybe before we kind of get into exactly what MagicLinks is, let's get to know you a little bit better and kind of start off with where you grew up.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was young, I grew up in Piedmont, California, which is in the East Bay, outside of San Francisco.
Sure.
And then around high school time, I moved down to Southern California to Pasadena.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Both nice areas in California.
They're great. Yeah, yeah. I'm fifth generation Californian on my dad's side, so a lot of roots here in Cali.
Really, that's great. Most people you meet in California actually aren't from California, so at least in my experience, anyway. I spent some time down
that's right.
in LA in 2004. I was down there for like 5-6 months, and so it's just funny because you're like, "Oh, where are you from?" And they were like from some other part of the world, and I always found that kind of fascinating about Los Angeles is you get so many people. Well, even California in general, you get so many people from kind of all over the world, like in one state. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's a melting pot. And, I mean, I think, I've lived in 10 states around the country.
Sure.
And people are always fascinated, I feel like, by California. And, obviously the weather is great out here.
Yeah.
And the landscape and, even like traveling around the world, there's I've been on the coast of Italy and people ask where I'm from and I say Santa Monica. And they're like, why did you travel all around the world when you have the most beautiful beaches in the world in Santa Monica or outside,
sure.
like up and down the California coast? Like it's a special place for sure.
That's great, man. So kind of you grew up born and raised in California. You spent some time kind of playing sports and baseball. Do you kind of want to walk me through kind of your career playing baseball?
Yeah, I would love to. So I played baseball at Dartmouth.
Okay.
And had a great career there. And my first year as a freshman, I was actually named Freshman All-American.
Oh wow!
And I had the third highest batting average in the country as a freshman.
Wow, that's incredible and really hard to do.
Yeah. But I also had challenges. So my sophomore year, I blew out my knee in the first game of the season.
Oh, that sucks.
And really kind of battled with. I had 5 knee surgeries through college in my sophomore and junior year. So I had, kind of started off really hot, and then had some struggles that I needed to go through. And then once my knee was finally healthy, my junior and senior year, I had a really, both those years were really good, and won a number of awards, and our team did well. And then I was fortunate enough to be drafted by the Dodgers coming out of school.
Sure.
And that was really, so I actually, growing up in the Bay Area, I grew up a Giants fan.
Sure.
And had to quickly change my allegiance to the Dodgers.
Sure.
But that was, just such a dream come true too. Of like, ever since I was young, I knew, I dreamed of playing professional baseball. And when that opportunity came up, it was really special, and one I was dying to pursue.
Sure. So you played baseball for a number of years. You eventually got out of baseball. You've worked for some huge brands. So do you maybe kind of want to walk me through your post-baseball career in kind of the internet startup space?
Sure. Most interestingly, right after baseball, I worked for a company, Avery Dennison.
Sure.
And while I was there, I was in a rotational program, and one of the jobs I had was managing a shift at a stop sign manufacturing plant.
Okay.
And so what I learned in that was everything. Well, one, I didn't want to do manufacturing.
Sure. Well, that's a very good lesson, right? You learn what you like to do and don't want to do.
Yes, that's very, very important in life. But I think we focus so many times on what we want to do
Totally.
that what we don't want to do is just as important. But what I found is that all of my projects at Avery, which is really a kind of traditional manufacturing company,
sure,
and there's some technology, but it's not fast moving technology like the internet is. And I found all of my projects were basically bringing new technology into manufacturing lines, and most of it was around data.
Sure.
So you have a manufacturing plant, you have all these machines and systems that have been designed to create a product, create a bunch of raw materials and turn it into a stop sign. But if you can actually measure and have data that tells you that what's happening at different stages of that process, you can sort of make more stop signs better, faster.
Sure.
And so that was really, that experience in a stop sign manufacturing plant is what made me say, okay, I love the technology piece of this, but I don't love the manufacturing part of it. And it was just natural to move into the internet. So my first role was with Yahoo.
Sure.
As a financial analyst in their, primarily in their search and display advertising teams. And so that, just a really cool way to learn about, how business is conducted on the internet at scale, how advertisers can generate an ROI from their activities, and kind of how publishers earn income. And Yahoo, at the time, and probably still is certainly like a top 50 internet property.
Sure.
Maybe top 25. And so, the ways that, the kind of scalability of advertising systems that we were building was really, an amazing learning experience for me.
Sure. And I always, this isn't really relevant, but I always remember their huge ad on like Sunset Boulevard in LA. Like, I don't think it's there anymore, correct?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, Yahoo's, I saw an interesting thing. I love Yahoo. I love my time there, but it was like Yahoo tried to acquire Google for 1 million very early on.
Yeah.
Then they realized their mistake and tried to acquire them for like 3 billion, and Google wanted 5 billion, and Yahoo said no. And then now Google's worth like 500 billion, and Yahoo just sold for 5 billion. So the world turns in interesting ways.
Yeah, no, totally. So, yeah, no, it's fascinating to me, right? Because you're right. Like, I just remember kind of 2004 going up and down Sunset some days, and, you always saw that, like, big thing. And then, like a decade later, it's just gone, right? And you're like, wow.
Right.
Like, because I could be totally wrong, but isn't like advertising on like the Sunset Strip like one of the most expensive ad buys kind of globally or something like that? I could be wrong, but it's like obviously really expensive.
Yeah, I would. So I was in an interesting conversation about this now, because right now many of the billboards are YouTube stars.
Sure.
On Sunset. And so like, why is that, right? Because YouTube in many ways represents a threat to traditional movies and traditional television.
Sure.
And I think one thing that's interesting, and maybe why that ad space is so expensive, is because of the decision makers that you have at studios that are driving up and down that street every day.
Ah, interesting.
So it might be like, it's not the volume of people, but if it's like Spielberg and Lucas and any number of like top, directors and producers and people at the largest media companies in the world, maybe that's why it's so expensive.
Sure. I never thought of that, but that makes a lot of sense. And that it kind of ties into why you created MagicLinks. But maybe before we get into that, like you've had a couple other kind of jobs before you, founded MagicLinks. So maybe let's cover that, and then we'll kind of tie everything back in once we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So after, I left Yahoo to join a company called Internet Brands.
Yeah.
And Internet Brands was originally Cars Direct, so it came out of Idea Lab,
Right.
A Pasadena-based company, and really had just a fascinating role at Internet Brands. My job was to build their shopping division.
Sure.
And so the company, which was born, Cars Direct, was born as Cars Direct, which fundamentally provided information for consumers so they could transact and buy a car online.
Right.
Which in 1998 or 1999 was absolutely revolutionary. We think of it, now you do it, or you could almost do it through an app. But at the time, that was revolutionary.
Totally.
And so the company basically said, if our core mission is really about information for consumers to transact online, and so we can build out different verticals of content around that kind of core value proposition.
Right.
So my role was acquiring websites in the kind of shopping and e-commerce space and then running those. And so that was fascinating, right? And especially as a budding entrepreneur. So my group did 17 deals over a 3-year period. So it was like almost once every 3 months we were acquiring a new business.
Wow. That's a lot.
And then, yeah, it's,
you were busy.
Our corp dev, I was busy. Our corp dev team was busy. Everyone was busy.
Sure.
And we, so then I would also manage the transition post acquisition. So many times, I'd be working directly with the entrepreneur of the company we had bought.
Sure.
And that entrepreneur would be slowly winding down their involvement in the business. Sometimes it'd be over, 3 months, and sometimes it'd be over 2 years. But as a person who wanted to become an entrepreneur, it was what a great experience to work with, 17 different entrepreneurs, all with a different take of how they had built their business online, how they thought about kind of growing audience and growing advertiser relationships, what they'd done from a technical perspective. And then, so it was just a really good learning base. And then my challenge was to kind of tie together all these assets in different classes and kind of make 1 and 1 equal 4.
Sure.
So I was I got really, earned my kind of entrepreneurial sea legs through that experience, and through managing, several businesses and building a tech platform to support all of them, and being fortunate to build a team of people that could help us execute and grow those businesses after acquiring them.
Sure. No, that's great. And then you left there and you decided to kind of co-found MagicLinks. So do you want to maybe kind of walk me through what exactly is MagicLinks and kind of why did you decide to start this thing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were getting into YouTube stars before. So
it was like the perfect segue, right?
Right? Yeah. So MagicLinks empowers creators, primarily on YouTube,
sure,
with tools for authentic social commerce.
Okay.
And so what that means is we make it really easy for a creator to curate products that they love, share those links with their fans, and then earn extra income when their fans shop.
Got you.
And so it's a way, it meets really 2 big problems that creators have is, creators today want to stay authentic.
Yep.
And that's how they've built their brand and how they've built their relationship with their audience. But they also want to earn income from the influence that they have.
Sure.
And right now, most of those opportunities are either through direct sponsorship deals with advertisers, which many times can feel very inauthentic.
Yeah.
And that can be like a big problem, right? Or maybe if they're publishing on YouTube, they get some ad dollars from YouTube, but it's nothing like if they were a television star.
Yeah, very much so. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm kind of curious, walk me through the process of kind of like I guess use me as kind of the guinea pig. Like walk me through how I use MagicLinks to kind of monetize my content.
Yeah. So say, so what's amazing about MagicLinks, I think, and why I think this is a really big idea, is that it applies to any content creator, and it's really the imagination of the content creator that drives what happens.
Okay, interesting.
So we're a tool that kind of supports that imagination. So for you, let's say Kevin, right? You had a special speaker that you used to record a podcast.
Sure.
And there are those, I forget the name of them, but do you know those like ball speakers?
Yeah,
It looks like
totally.
So your fans are watching your content, they're engaging with it. Some of them might want to emulate your success as a broadcaster and as a creator of podcast content.
Sure.
And they would naturally have a question. Hey, Kevin, how do I do this? Like, what do you use?
Yep. And I've had that question before too. And I've sent them just an email with that link or list of gear. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And so in that case, you are basically, one, how many fans have that question and don't ask?
Sure.
Or do ask, and you have a lot of emails, and you're doing a solid and kind of sharing that information, but maybe you're not able to respond, right? So There's that breakage in the moment of inspiration.
Yep.
And then two, if you've told your fan, here's where that speaker is sold, at Crutchfield or at Newegg or at Best Buy or at Walmart. You're basically advertising for that brand.
Sure.
You're taking your trust and you're telling a fan or a person or a friend, here's that product and here's the store I would actually recommend that you buy it from.
Sure.
And so, if you earn money if someone chooses to buy, that seems like a great kind of deal all the way around. You provided a service to the fan. Mm-hmm. You provided a new customer to the retailer, and the retailer has received, a benefit of someone new who's shopping at their store. So we really see it as like a win-win-win for all parties involved.
Totally. No, that makes a lot of sense. So one question I do have for you though is, do you have to get a bunch of retailers on board, or you guys just kind of handle that, or kind of how do you go about actually getting me my like commission or whatever for, if somebody does buy?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's a great question. And I think, one of the things, so some creators have heard about affiliate marketing. Yeah. Some haven't. And I think a lot of times affiliate as a channel gets a bad rap.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I think there's some really valid reasons for it. And we're trying to change that conversation, right? We're trying to understand why people have been frustrated with it and create a much better experience.
Right.
Because I think it really is, it has the potential to solve some problems in a really, kind of profound and unique way. And so one of the challenges that creators have is like, how do I get a relationship with a retailer? What are the terms of that relationship? How do I kind of how do I earn a commission if I do send a sale?
Yep.
And so what we're constantly doing is a number of things. One, we are reaching out to advertisers and bringing them on board MagicLinks and basically becoming partners for creators to have access to.
Yeah, that's great.
And so the idea is, where we want it to be is, as a creator, you can kind of link to any product at any store online and earn a commission anywhere.
Right.
And as we build up to that, there's a lot of education for retailers. So, some retailers get it right away, especially newer retailers that have launched in the last 4 or 5 years and are kind of they understand the power of influencer marketing and kind of creators at an early stage, creators on Instagram or on YouTube or on Facebook. And so some brands have fully embraced it.
Sure.
And then other brands maybe have not. And they'll have, different concerns about that channel. And so at MagicLinks, right, our challenge is reach out to those advertisers, negotiate on behalf of creators. In some cases, it's educating the brands on what's going on YouTube.
Yep.
And I've heard everything,
Sure.
um, literally, some brands, you have the conversation and they're like, well, we're starting to create content on YouTube and we want to like own everything and kind of control everything. And so in those cases, we're educating the brand of like, okay, that's great. People are, some people are going to watch your video, but there's also 100,000 people who are using your products and talking about your products.
Yep.
What if fans, when they watch those videos, were a click away from your store instead of, several steps of remember it, maybe search for it, what was the brand, where is it, what's the color? Any friction for a fan these days is really, you lose that moment of inspiration from a purchase. And so we're trying to help retailers capture that moment of inspiration by being there and being present and being a curated, part of the experience of a video.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And like part of the reason I reached out to you to be on the show was a selfish reason, because obviously I'm creating content, right? And we're creating content even right now. And like you're right. Like it's tricky for people like myself, whether it's, trying to reach out to people or, trying to find stuff to actually potentially promote and not make it sound like you're just trying to like sell it to somebody all the time. And then sometimes it's just even like not even having the time to do it, right? Like people are busy, like I work full time and do this as well. And so it's like when I found you guys and reached out to you, I was like, wow, me personally, I could really use this, right? For kind of what I'm doing on the show and like I also read for another blog. And so like I'm creating content in a bunch of different mediums. And I was like, wow, I really need to have like yourself and you guys on the show, right? And so I think it's great what you guys are doing, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting to me, your comment about when we were talking about Yahoo and like the billboards on Sunset. Like it's interesting now that YouTube creators are putting themselves kind of in this physical, like almost the medium that they're killing off a bit, right? To go back to being online so they can promote stuff back to people, right? And I think that's fascinating to me, and that you guys are kind of connecting those dots and those creators, because to a lot of people, and I read a study a while ago that was saying that to certain age ranges, specifically like younger kind of teenagers, that if you ask them about some of the biggest movie stars of kind of like, say, Generation X or even some of the older millennials, that like if you named like Leonardo DiCaprio or like John Travolta or like guys that like everybody knows, a lot of them would say that this YouTube star would be way bigger than any of those movie stars that like, that we would think are huge. And I'm 33, right? And I'd be like, well, no, I've never even heard of that YouTube guy. But like they're in a teenager's mindset, they're way bigger and way more popular and way more influential. And I think the fact that these guys are going to one of the most expensive advertising platforms on the planet in the physical space and trying to bring them back kind of to the internet, I think a lot of the brands that you guys are maybe having struggles kind of trying to tell their story, I think it's just a matter of time, and it's probably it's probably months away where they're starting to think like, oh wow, like this is actually happening, and we need to actually work with you guys to help this, because it's a real thing now. And if they didn't think that, I think even just those billboards kind of validate everything you guys are doing, right?
I would love to I wonder what the equivalent in terms of like brand concentration is, right? So Sunset is a lot of studio executives.
Sure.
I would like to have some billboard signs up near where retail executives drive.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like Chicago, San Francisco, and New York or something to help broaden that. But
sure, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think and I think so if you're a brand today. Or really like, and when I say brand, like any online retailer that's selling anything,
sure.
Amazon has to be forefront of your mind.
Yeah.
And Amazon is, such a powerful force, right? They have these 3 tiers of value that they deliver on. So price. You know, you're going to get a good price, if not the cheapest, pretty, you know, a fair low price.
Yep.
Delivery. So, you know, you're going to get really fast delivery. And that's the one that I think, you know, almost anyone who sells online, is really tough to compete with Amazon Prime.
Yeah, very much so.
And then three is selection, right? So there's, you know, the product catalog on Amazon, I think, is well over 100 or 200 million SKUs. So, that's very hard to compete with. Even you see Walmart. Walmart in brick and mortar obviously is much larger than Amazon in a physical presence space, but has really struggled online, and
Sure.
I think that's part of why they bought Jet.com.
Interesting.
So,
I didn't know they bought them, but that's actually really interesting.
Yeah, that's fairly recently, and you know, Jet has grown really fast, and obviously is a competitor to Amazon.
Sure.
But I think, you know, knowing that context is the lens through which a retailer today has to compete in the online world, the brands that really seem to be, you know, I think making, you know, growing really quickly, especially young brands, are the ones who are embracing, you know, influencers and embracing alternative channels. It's not even alternative, but just embracing these channels. The only reason I say alternative is because people used to think it was all search, or all display ad driven. And those are still large and very valuable channels. But this generation of consumer, you know, they're on their mobile device. They're not watching, you know, as you say, right? They're not watching movies. They don't know who Leonardo DiCaprio is, or if they know that Leonardo DiCaprio is, like, you know, kind of distant, relative to their friend, who's a YouTube star, who they basically wake up with every morning and watch her video of her, you know, doing makeup or her fashion that day, from her apartment. So they feel like they're friends with that person versus, you know, someone on the screen is very distant.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And that's why I think what you guys are doing is really interesting to me, because you're kind of on the cutting edge of this kind of how to monetize this stuff, because you're right. Like, a lot of those, they might make YouTube ad revenue, but they are recommending stuff all the time, right? And traditionally, how you track that was pretty archaic, right?
Right. Still.
Yeah.
And many times still. Yeah.
So I'm curious then, how do you guys monetize MagicLinks?
So we are very straightforward with creators. It's a 70-30 revenue share with creators.
Okay.
And that also aligns our interests. So any money that's made, a creator makes 70% of it.
Right.
And so what that lets us do is go to a specific brand, right? So say, and basically create a win for everybody.
Sure.
So if we work with a brand, and maybe I can take an example of, like, Best Buy as a brand that people know.
Sure.
And let's say they pay a really low commission rate on their TVs because they have a really low margin on their TVs, right? But we can go to Best Buy and say, you know, there's several thousand people, creators on YouTube, who use MagicLinks, and we know the value of their traffic is really high.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can bring Best Buy scale to many YouTubers all at once.
Right.
And Best Buy should be willing to pay more for that. And in many cases, brands are, especially when they see the metrics of you know, the value of essentially a young millennial audience coming to them through YouTube or through Instagram or through Facebook or through any of these social channels. Mm-hmm. It's a really valuable audience, and it's a win for everybody. So then we can convince a brand to pay more, and then 70% of that all passes down to the creator.
No, that's great. And, like, from my understanding, you guys have some really big brands already that you guys have partnered with. You mentioned a few, but do you maybe want to mention a few others that you guys have kind of partnered with, just so the listener kind of fully understands the magnitude that you guys are already working with?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's more than 1,000 top tier retail brands already live on MagicLinks.
Wow.
So, and it's everyone from, Nordstrom and Sephora and Anthropologie and Walmart and, Home Depot and Lululemon. And then also in Jet.com, right? And Target. So almost any big brand you can think of is a partner on MagicLinks and is, is a participant in this type of model. And then there's also niche retailers. So in the gaming space, there's a company called Evil Controllers.
Okay.
That's basically it's like a tricked out controller.
That's great.
Customized tricked out controller. And then, in the makeup space, we have a brand called Tatcha, which is a fairly new brand that's kind of inspired by geishas in Japan.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So that's it kind of goes from the really big retailer that everyone knows all the way down to a retailer that's small and specifically focused on a niche. There's another brand called Benefit Cosmetics.
Okay.
That's a kind of new and up and coming cosmetics company. Beautylish is another. So these are brands that the average consumer may not know about, but when you have this micro audience that's around a specific creator, so in Evil Controllers, a young woman doing makeup probably doesn't know what that is.
Sure.
But a young gamer knows Evil Controllers and loves the brand and is the opportunity to get an Evil Controller would just be awesome.
Sure. And I'm sure there's some adults that know that brand as well.
I'm sure, yeah. For any of the gamer audience, yeah, you can be of any age and enjoy a game.
I love that, though. No, that's great. I think that's what's kind of, and put aside my kind of selfish interest in what you guys are doing. I think what's interesting, and another reason I really wanted to have you on the show is to get people that are maybe not a millennial and older than that, to understand kind of why the people that are in the space that you guys are playing in are really relevant and can really build their brand, right? And I think a lot of brands, and it sounds like you've had some struggles just trying to even tell brands that this is a real thing and you can really capitalize and monetize on this market. And and I just kind of wanted to have you on the show to, again, kind of put that message out there to say, look, there's a lot of teenagers that could care less about kind of traditional people that are popular. They care about these people that are big online, right?
Yeah. So it's really, I think in our world today, right, we are absolutely bombarded with information and signal, right? So even I love to kind of share contextually, right? But you and I have been talking for maybe 30 minutes or so.
Yep.
And probably just between the two of us, we've probably received 10,000 pieces of information. If you add up emails, maybe text messages, automated alerts, things that are coming through, maybe a weather signal, maybe a phone message, right? So there's we are absolutely bombarded with information, and cell phones are a big, kind of pro and con around that. There's a lot you can do, but there's also a lot of signal that you get.
Sure.
And so the most valuable thing in the world today, I think, is attention.
Oh, very much.
Yeah, and it's right. Do you have the attention of someone?
Yeah.
And you see it even at such a micro level. If you're sitting down at lunch and you're with a couple of people and someone has their phone, you don't really have their attention. It's a different conversation than if the phone is put away.
Sure.
And so getting back to why this space is so valuable for brands is that young people, their attention is spent on YouTube.
Yep.
The medium of essentially storytelling that happens through a video is much more compelling than anything that's written or a blog post or a text message even, right? To see and hear and get all the pieces of human communication that come through on a video is where people's attention is. And so being a part of that attention is really valuable for brands.
Totally. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's interesting, right? And I think too, like if anybody listening is kind of trying to target a younger demographic, and they're not spending a bunch of time online, you really need to.
Yeah, I mean, you should be kind of playing with the toys that your target demographic is playing with.
Yeah.
I saw a great post from I think Gary Vaynerchuk
Okay. Yeah.
recently, where he was talking about, it's not enough to sort of say, oh yeah, like I understand Instagram. Like, no, you have to be on the platform and playing with it to really understand how others are using it.
Yeah, and still, like, I think it's a little trial and error on the different platforms as well, right? You got to see what content works and doesn't work on those platforms.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and it's no, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, the other side is kind of on the creator side.
Okay.
So as people are thinking about kind of like how do they get started as a creator, or is there room to be a creator? I think of a couple things. I think, number one, there's never really been a better time in the history of our world to be a creator, because there are these social platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. You put that content out there, it can be in the hands of 1 billion people in days.
Yep.
And especially, I mean, that's not going to happen for most people, but if it's really, really, really compelling content, that's exactly what happens right now.
Totally.
And then also, right, like, can you make a living from it? And I think a lot of people as creators early on can get tied up in like, well, how do I get a brand sponsor? How do I get, a brand to pay me for what I'm doing? And in my mind, that is a part of the business, and it is part of something that you want to create. But you can also have these other platforms. I think, MagicLinks is a great tool to, kind of help get started and like earn that income as you're getting started. And then also you can start to learn, hey, my audience is, they love the speakers that I was talking about, but the the new shoes that I was talking about, nobody was really interested in that.
Yeah.
That gives you really important data and feedback on the type of content that you're creating and what's resonating with your fans. And then you can, do more of what your fans love.
No, totally. And I think the other thing to mention too, and like this is from my own experience, is it takes a while to build up a following, and you're kind of always building your following, right? And you're always kind of growing it, right? And I think it's important that, like, if it doesn't happen overnight, that you get all these, this traction, like, you need to keep at it for a while, right? And like you mentioned, you need to a little bit of trial and error. You're like, well, I'll try this, and oh, that post didn't work, so I'm going to write more like this because those posts have been more popular, right? So it's a little bit of a trial and error thing, but I think trial and error is almost like on and offline in kind of anything career-wise. You need to be a lot of trial and error to see what works and doesn't work, right? And that's been my own experience anyway.
Absolutely. And I think, and such an important ingredient of that too is persistence.
Yeah.
Just like not giving up after the first time or the 10th time or the 100th time that, something doesn't work the way you want it to, just that continued kind of engagement. And as a creator, that's, content driven. And obviously as a business, right, when we were, just starting out, there were a lot of brand conversations that we couldn't even have a conversation with a retailer.
Right.
Or we'd have it with them and they were, at that point in time, like, they didn't fully understand it, or we didn't have enough scale, or there was some reason not to move forward. And then, but that persistence is like, okay, well, let's talk in 3 months, or let's talk in 6 months, or let's revisit a year from now. And that, kind of persistence can really pay off. And I think that's just, that's almost a life thing. That applies to whether you're a creator or a business or a brand or anything. Just that, kind of persistence in the trial and error is so important to take you where you want to go.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And that's kind of been my experience with pretty much, anything I've kind of done is like I still hear no from people when I reach out to them to be on the show. And, I don't really take it personally anymore. Like, it kind of bugged me before, but you're right. But then like 6 months later, you might reach out to them again and they're like, sure, of course.
Yeah.
Right. And like, it's if you really want something, you kind of need to figure out how to make it happen. And it might not happen overnight. It might take months. It might take years. But like, you're right. Like, it's just being persistent with this stuff, right? And not getting down on yourself and, almost like picking yourself back up. Like, there's been days where I, don't write back to email for a couple of days because it's like, oh, that was kind of sucky that didn't happen. But, you pick yourself back up and you go for it again, right? And you try some other angle. And I think that's inspiring to people, because I think like what really got me thinking about it is you start talking to really successful people. And, even the conversation we're just having right now is like, you guys are obviously really successful. You've closed big brands that everybody's heard of. But to your point, like, it didn't happen overnight, right? And it took you 3-6 months to close some of these. And I think that's inspiring to people that are, maybe starting out or kind of have a new product that they're trying to get going. Like, it takes a while. And I think it's important that people like yourself mention that, right? And to keep people kind of motivated and kind of pick themselves back up if they had a kind of a crummy week or month or quarter, that it will get better as you kind of persist with this thing.
So one of the favorite things I love to think about, and that is, sometimes I'll hear from people, oh, I'm too old to start that.
Okay.
It might be like, I'm too old to start a YouTube channel or an Instagram channel or something like that. So Ray Kroc was 63 years old when he started McDonald's.
Right.
And right, that's like, it's such a powerful thing. You can always start. You can always, you're never really too old to do anything.
Totally.
Maybe at 63, you're not, mountain climbing or jumping off a cliff, but then there's also people who are doing that at that age.
Totally.
And so I think that, I think, so many times so Tati Westbrook is a big YouTube star in the beauty space.
Okay, yeah.
And I heard her keynote a conference recently, and she was saying, she now has, I think, over 2 million subscribers, but I think hers has been, it's like a 4 or 5 year journey.
Okay. Yeah.
And really, like, it was, the first 10, she talks about kind of the first time she did a video, she was horrified at what she created, totally embarrassed about it, like put it up, 2 people watched it, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is awful,
Sure.
And that experience, she had to keep working at it, keep fine tuning, keep getting up, going through all those times that are more challenging than others. And then, at a certain point, you kind of get a break here, a break there. And then like, she gets to this point where then like all of a sudden the snowball's rolling fast downhill, and she goes from like, 500,000 subscribers to 2 million in a period of just a few months.
Yeah, totally.
But then the challenge is too, right? So many people look at that and they're like, oh, Tati, she's famous.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, she's successful. She's made it. And she's like, no, like from her perspective, she's like, I scraped for years to put this together, and it's not an easy thing. And so many times we tell ourselves that something isn't doable, and really, if you tell yourself that, you're right. And if you tell yourself that it is doable, you're also right.
Yeah. It's like it took you 5 years to become an overnight success, or in her case, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
No, I think that's great. And, but Brian, we're kind of coming to the end of the show. So maybe let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself and MagicLinks.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. So MagicLinks is, we're at www.magiclinks.org, or you can search for MagicLinks on Google and we'll pop up.
Sure.
We also have Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook accounts. But the main place to find us is at our website at magiclinks.org. We also have a number of videos on our YouTube channel. And really, so MagicLinks, I'll just kind of give the really quick overview of what we are again. We empower creators with tools for authentic social commerce to make it really easy for a creator to curate products that they love, share it with their fans, and earn income if and when their fans shop, and provide kind of a third tier of commerce. So in addition to sponsorship revenue you might get as a creator, or platform revenue that would come from like YouTube, there's also this social commerce piece that MagicLinks empowers.
Sure, man. Well, that's great, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Okay, thank you so much, Kevin. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
All right, we'll talk soon. Bye.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show was done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.